The Memphis air in April hangs thick and heavy, a promise of the coming summer rain. It is a city on edge, a city divided, a city where the sanitation workers, clad in their Sunday best, even on a weekday strike, carry signs that declare, simply, "I am a man." And into this tense atmosphere, on the 3rd of April, 1968, comes a man who is both a pillar of strength and a vessel of profound weariness. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. checks into room 306 at the Lorraine Motel, a 2-story, rust brick building that has become a sanctuary for Black travelers, a place of rest and refuge. He is tired. The weight of the movement, the constant threats, the philosophical battles within the civil rights struggle itself, they all press down on his 39-year-old shoulders. His physical body seems to carry the exhaustion of 1,000 marches. The evening arrives, and he is due to speak at the Mason Temple, a vast cavern of a church. A storm is brewing, lashing the city with wind and rain, and the crowd is smaller than expected. He is not feeling well, a cold perhaps, and he asks his close friend and colleague, Ralph Abernathy, to go in his stead. But the people want Dr. King. They have come to hear the prophet, not the disciple. And so, urged by the call of the crowd, he goes. Inside the temple, the air is electric, charged with a need for hope. He steps to the pulpit, and without a prepared text, he begins to speak. His voice, that magnificent instrument of moral clarity, starts low, almost conversational, but it builds, rising and falling with the rhythm of a deep and powerful river. He speaks of the Memphis struggle, of justice, of dignity. He recounts the long arc of the civil rights movement, the sit-ins, the freedom rides, the march from Selma to Montgomery. He talks of the bomb threats, the constant shadow of death. And then he seems to transcend the moment to look beyond the storm-lashed windows of the Mason Temple and into the very heart of destiny. His voice drops, becoming intimate, confessional. "I don't know what will happen now," he says, the words hanging in the hushed air. "We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the Mountaintop." A murmur of affirmation ripples through the crowd, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. The silence in the temple is absolute, a collective intake of breath. Every soul is fixed upon Him. "I may not get there with you," he continues, his voice swelling with a terrible, beautiful certainty. "But I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." The final words are a thunderclap of hope and despair intertwined. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. The applause is explosive, a cathartic release of emotion. It is, though no one in that room could know it, his eulogy. He had preached his own funeral sermon, a prophecy etched in the air for all to remember. The next day, April 4th, passes with a strange, suspended quality. There is business to attend to, meetings with lawyers and local leaders about the ongoing sanitation workers' strike. The mood at the Lorraine is a mixture of resolve and lingering fatigue from the previous night's emotional peak. Dr. King spends much of the day in room 306, a space now imbued with the casual detritus of life on the road. Scattered papers, a half-eaten meal, the sound of familiar voices. Across the courtyard, in room 5B, members of his inner circle, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, relax and prepare for the evening. They're going to dinner at the home of a local minister. The promise of a good meal and fellowship lightens the mood. As the afternoon sun begins its slow descent, casting long, distorted shadows from the motel's iron railings, Dr. King steps out of his room onto the second-floor balcony. He leans over the green-painted railing, breathing in the early evening air. Below him, in the parking lot, his driver, Solomon Jones, is preparing the car. The musician Ben Branch is also there, and Dr. King calls down to him, his voice warm and friendly. "Ben, make sure you play Precious Lord, Take My Hand at the meeting tonight." He requests to be played real pretty. These are his last words, a request for a hymn of solace, a song for the weary. It is 6:01 p.m. From a flophouse rooming house across the street, a dilapidated building called Bessie Brewer's Rooming House, a single shot cracks through the air. It is not a loud, dramatic explosion, but a sharp, precise report, like the snapping of a giant tree limb. For a fraction of a second, time seems to stop, the sound hanging in the air, refusing to dissipate. On the balcony, Dr. King stumbles backward, the force of the high-powered rifle bullet tearing in his right cheek, shattering his jaw, severing his spinal cord. His friends, Jesse Jackson, Ralph Abernathy, and Andrew Young, who moments before were laughing and joking, now stare in frozen, incomprehensible horror. There is no blood. At first, just the sudden, impossible collapse of their leader, their friend, the center of their universe. Chaos erupts, a silent movie suddenly cranked into frantic, screaming motion. People point wildly toward the rooming house across Mulberry Street. Abernathy, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm of denial, rushes to his friend's side, cradling his head. The wound is catastrophic. There is no doubt. On the ground below, Solomon Jones looks up, his mind refusing to process the scene. The world has just been irrevocably broken, and the sound of the shot is now replaced by the sound of wailing, of desperate prayers, of a single, anguished cry that seems to come from the very soul of the motel itself. A moment of profound peace has been shattered, replaced by a void of unimaginable loss. The news does not travel, it detonates. It ripples out from the Lorraine Motel in waves of shock and grief, first through Memphis, then across the nation, carried by the crackling voices of radio announcers who struggle to maintain their professional composure. In cities and towns across America, people stop what they are doing. They gather around television sets and store windows, their faces illuminated by the ghostly blue glow of the news bulletins. In Harlem, in Atlanta, in Chicago, in the neighborhoods where hope had been a fragile but tangible thing, a visceral cry of pain goes up. Windows are smashed, fires are set. The pent-up fury and despair of a people who have lost their most potent voice for nonviolence explodes into violence. It is a cruel, tragic irony that plays out in real time. The apostle of peace fell by a bullet, and his dream seemingly consumed by flames. In Washington, D.C., President Lyndon B. Johnson is informed. He stares into the middle distance, the weight of a fractured nation settling upon him. He had clashed with King, had been pushed by him, but he understood the man's monumental significance. Robert F. Kennedy, campaigning for president in Indianapolis, is told just before he is to speak to a predominantly black crowd. He makes a choice that will be remembered for its grace and courage. He speaks not from a prepared text, but from his own wounded heart, telling the crowd of the terrible news. He asks them to respond with prayer and understanding, quoting the Greek poet Aeschylus about the need to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Miraculously, Indianapolis remains calm that night, a solitary island of peace in a sea of national anguish. The investigation begins immediately, a massive, sprawling federal manhunt led by the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover. The crime scene is a puzzle box of potential clues. In the bathroom of room 5B at the rooming house across from the Lorraine, investigators find a neatly arranged staging area, a pair of binoculars, a radio, a newspaper, a beer can, and, discarded in the doorway, a .30-06 Remington Game Master rifle. The rifle has fingerprints. Nearby, just a few blocks away, a bundle is discovered containing more evidence: a portable television, a pair of pliers, a map of Atlanta, and a copy of the Atlanta Constitution. The evidence points to a single, meticulous individual. The fingerprints are matched to an escaped convict, James Earl Ray. Ray is a career small-time criminal, a man of limited intellect but a cunning survival instinct. His path to Memphis is a twisted trail of aliases and low-rent hideouts. Using the name Eric Galt, he had traveled through Los Angeles, Mexico, and then to Atlanta before arriving in Memphis. The manhunt is international, a 2-month-long chase that tracks him to Canada, to Portugal, and finally to London's Heathrow Airport. On June 8, 1968, he is apprehended trying to board a flight for Brussels. The case, it seems, is closed. A lone gunman, a racist drifter, had acted alone. The narrative is clean, efficient, and provides a desperate nation with a semblance of resolution. James Earl Ray is returned to Memphis, where he initially, under the guidance of his first attorney, Percy Foreman, confesses to the assassination. He pleads guilty in March 1969, seemingly to avoid a trial and a potential death sentence, and is sentenced to 99 years in prison. But the clean narrative almost immediately begins to fray at the edges. Within days of his sentencing, Ray recants his confession. He claims he was a patsy, a fall guy in a larger conspiracy. He says a shadowy figure he knew only as Raoul had directed his movements, had given him money and instructions, and that he, Ray, had no idea the plot was to assassinate Dr. King. He would spend the rest of his life trying to get a new trial, a quest that would transform him from a confessed assassin into a perpetual petitioner, a man claiming to be the scapegoat for a crime he did not fully understand. And so, the doubts begin to seed and grow. The official story, the lone gunman theory, is picked apart by journalists, by historians, and by the King family itself. The questions are persistent and troubling. The shot, as described by ballistics experts, was incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for a marksman of Ray's mediocre ability. Witnesses at the rooming house reported seeing other men, mysterious figures coming and going. There were reports of a man seen running from a brushy area behind the rooming house immediately after the shot, a different escape route than the one Ray was alleged to have taken. The bundle containing the rifle was found too neatly, almost as if it were meant to be found, a convenient package of evidence pointing directly to one man. The role of the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover becomes a central point of contention. Hoover's obsessive, often vicious campaign to discredit and destroy Dr. King is a matter of public record. The FBI's COINTELPRO program had wiretapped his phones, sent him threatening letters, and attempted to blackmail him. They had surveilled him relentlessly. Given this context, could elements within the FBI or other government agencies have been involved? Or, at the very least, had they turned a blind eye to a plot they knew was unfolding? The failure of the Memphis police to provide adequate security for Dr. King, despite the numerous and specific death threats, is another gaping hole in the official narrative. It was a stunning lapse, one that felt to many deliberate. In 1977, Coretta Scott King, along with the couple's children, stood before the Select Committee on Assassinations of the U.S. House of Representatives and pleaded for a new investigation. The committee, after a lengthy probe, concluded in 1979 that Dr. King was likely killed as a result of a conspiracy. They stated that Ray fired the shot, but that he probably did not act alone, that he was likely motivated by the promise of a financial reward from St. Louis-based segregationists. Yet, they could not identify the other conspirators, and their evidence was largely circumstantial. The report did little to settle the matter. It simply replaced one set of questions with another. The theories multiplied, sprawling into a dark and tangled forest of possibilities. There was the Memphis underworld theory, involving local businessmen and criminals who wanted King gone. There was the mafia theory, positing that the mob, fearful of King's influence in cities where they held power, ordered the hit. There was the theory of a vast, high-level government conspiracy, a deep state assassination to silence the most powerful moral voice of the era. And always, at the center of it all, was the enigmatic figure of Raoul, the spectral puppet master whom Ray described in ever-shifting detail, a ghost that could never be found, a name that led only to dead ends. In 1999, the King family, convinced of James Earl Ray's innocence, or at least of his role as a pawn in a larger game, filed a wrongful death lawsuit. In a Memphis courtroom, they argued their case not before a criminal jury, but a civil one. The jury, after hearing 4 weeks of testimony, took less than an hour to deliver a stunning verdict. They found that Dr. King was the victim of a conspiracy involving Lloyd Jowers, the owner of Jim's Grill, a restaurant near the rooming house, and that governmental agencies were parties to the conspiracy. It was a symbolic victory, a declaration from 12 citizens that the official story was a lie. Yet, no new criminal charges were ever filed. Jowers' story was riddled with inconsistencies, and the Justice Department, after multiple reviews, has consistently upheld the conclusion that James Earl Ray acted alone. James Earl Ray died in prison in 1998, taking his secrets or his fantasies with him. The murder weapon, the fingerprints, the alias, the flight. The physical evidence against him is a mountain that his claims of Raoul could never fully erode. Yet, the lingering questions are a stain on the historical record, a persistent whisper in the ear of history that the full truth of that April evening has never been told. The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. remains an open wound, a crime solved and yet unresolved, a story with a clear villain, but no clear motive, no satisfying answer to the question, why? But to focus solely on the mystery of the assassin's bullet is to risk losing the meaning of the life it extinguished. The man on the balcony was more than a target. He was a prophet. His dream, articulated 5 years earlier on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, did not die with him on the concrete of the Lorraine Motel. In a cruel, paradoxical way, the shot that killed him amplified his voice, etching his words into the permanent consciousness of the nation and the world. The dream of a nation where his 4 little children would one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, became his eternal legacy. His voice, that sonorous, unwavering baritone, did not fall silent. It was taken up by others, by the millions he had inspired. It echoes in the laws he helped change, in the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, in the very fabric of an America that, while still struggling with its original sin of racism, is undeniably more just because he lived. It echoes in the work of Barack Obama, who stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial a half-century later, a living testament to the progress King made possible. It echoes in the streets today, in the calls for justice and equality from a new generation, who may have never heard his original speeches, but who marched to the same drumbeat of moral urgency. The Lorraine Motel is now the National Civil Rights Museum. Visitors walk through its halls. They stand in room 306, preserved as it was on that day. They look out from the balcony, now enclosed in glass, toward the old rooming house across the street. It is a place of pilgrimage, of quiet reflection. The physical space has been sanctified by tragedy and by hope. The motel courtyard, once a scene of panic and grief, is now a place where people of all races and nations come to remember, to learn, and to be challenged. The story of April 4th, 1968, is therefore 2 stories inextricably woven together. One is a gritty American crime story, a tale of a sniper's nest, a fugitive's flight, and a conspiracy that may forever remain shrouded in shadow. It is a story of a single, violent act that sought to halt the march of history. The other story is a spiritual epic, a story of a dream that refused to die, of a voice that grew louder in its physical absence, of a legacy of love and nonviolence that continues to confront hatred. The first story is about how he died. The second, and far more important, is about how he lived and why he lived and how his life forever changed the world. The mystery of the assassination may never be fully solved, but the meaning of his life is an answer that continues to reveal itself with each passing day, in every struggle for dignity, in every heart that chooses hope over fear and love over hate. The promise of the promised land, glimpsed from the mountaintop, still beckons.